Welcome everybody from my side, and today we're going to look at developing essential communication skills. I'm going to focus on giving some background on communication. We will look at basic communication skills and the barriers involved. Then spend some time on body language and the different aspects about communication that I know you'll find very interesting. Just so that everybody is on the same page, I want to start with number one, why do nonprofits need communication skills? The bottom line is that in all organizations, whether for profit or non-profit, you interact with people. As soon as you interact with people, that implies communication. Then you need certain skills to communicate successfully. We spend an average of 70 to 80% of our waking time in some form of communication, at home, at work, or socially. That is a very high percentage. So perhaps it will be a good idea to understand how to communicate correctly. Then I would like to look at the process of communication. First of all, we have a sender, which initiates the communication. They transmit ideas, instructions, or a message that they want to share with the receiver. It can be verbally or non-verbally, in such a way that the receiver will understand it. Then the channel. This connects the sender to the receiver, either speaking physically to the person, by telephone, Zoom, business meetings, and so forth. Next, noise. This is unfortunately the negative aspect that hinders successful communication. And it can be anything from a bad internet reception, baby crying, heavy vehicle traffic, people talking too loudly in the office, gestures and posture that distort that message. Let me give you an example. We wanted to buy a house in an area next to an airport. While we were there, the aircraft noise was overwhelming. You could hardly speak to anyone, let alone make a phone call. Thank goodness that we realized that and did not buy it. That is a form of noise that can most certainly hinder communication. Another example of noise, let's say a client has just received very bad news during a meeting with them. You can see that they are not focusing anymore. The best would be to call it a day and reschedule. Now a question, let's hear from you. What noise has hindered your communication? Just 2 words in the chat box, please. Desiree, can you give me some feedback? Because I can't
don't
see the chat
see
box.
any feedback yet. So thumbs up, thumbs down, give us some feedback in the chat box. The chat box is right outside. Right down below. I'm reading about the ducks outside. Okay, my phone rang. My phone rang, the ducks outside, so that's the noise I have so far. 2 more messages. My cat crying, barking dog, laundry. There you go.
Excellent. So you can identify. Super. Then the receiver. This is the person to whom the message has been transmitted and must now be decoded. This is the process of translating the verbal and non-verbal communication, technical jargon, and language by the receiver. Finally, feedback. This refers to the response from the receiver, which will allow the sender to confirm if the transmission was understood. Feedback is so important, and we tend to forget this part. That is why I have number 3, why is feedback important? There are 2 essential reasons. We can send a wrong message by just one mistaken word or one incorrect gesture or voice tone, and the funding or business deal is lost or the person hurt. What is so sad is that we sometimes don't even realize that that has occurred. The other reason is that it is so critical to know how to be able to say exactly what you mean, and then to also correctly understand and interpret what the other person is saying to you. A question to you. Who of you have been misunderstood in your conversation? Just a quick yes or no. Okay, it seems to me the sound is not good at this stage.
Well, Yvonne, we have lots of yeses coming through. Yes, yes, often yes, most of the time.
Excellent.
Right, let's see. Yes, most for sure. Yes. Lots and lots of yeses. Okay, so I think we all can agree. We know what it feels like.
Excellent. I'd like to share a verbal skill called give summary. This is all about feedback. It can be used during or especially at the end of a conversation. Give summary can help with an irate client, giving an instruction to an employee, and even be used at home. It can also be used to clarify something that does not make sense or to ensure that everyone is on the same page. My scenario is an instruction that I give to an employee at the end of a conversation. I'll start by saying, let's just summarize what we have spoken about. You're going to connect with the necessary clients and get the information. Finalize the booking. Send me the catering requirements by, let's say, the 15th of September. Prepare the itinerary. I will contact the venue, finish off the course material, discuss catering details with the person concerned, and I think I will also list all the equipment requirements. And lastly, I say, is this correct? Just to finish off the conversation. 4. What is verbal and non-verbal communication? First, a question to you with a yes or no. Are you aware of non-verbal communication?
Lots of yeses. Yes, 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 all the way.
I am so pleased to hear that. Super. Let's first focus on verbal communication. It is audible sound. That is basically the actual speaking to the people around it. Your boss, colleagues, cleaner, cashier, babysitter, parents, children, spouse, and so forth. Now, non-verbal communication. There are a variety of aspects here. We can look at voice tone. You can speak in a monotonous tone of voice, and it will be very boring. Or you can vary your pitch to keep the information interesting. Then gestures. When you gesture as you speak, it's more likely that your words will linger in someone's mind. But don't overdo it, like curl your hair around your finger, touch your nose, your eyes, your forehead. It can be so irritating and people will focus more on that than on the content of the message. By the way, it can also be classified as noise. Another non-verbal aspect is posture. Do you walk with purpose and confidence or in a desultory fashion? Science says slouching your shoulders can make you hold on to space and feel sad. Standing up straight can help you to feel positive and come across as confident and focused. Then another cue is dress code or image. I'd like to share an example of a family member who had a PhD in maths. He was out of work. This is many years ago. Why? I have no idea, but he was busy painting a fence. A friend stopped by and said to him there's a maths teacher position available at the local high school. And if he's interested, he should go immediately. So he jumped into the car. And remember, this is overall and all. He was guided into the headmaster's office. And he said to him, I'm interested in a maths teacher position. Now I want you to see this image, please. The headmaster looked him up and down, stood up, walked over to him and said, do you realize that you need a degree for this position? Our family member looked the headmaster up and down and said, you know what? I'm not interested in this position anymore. And by the way, I have a PhD in maths. A bad situation. The result was that both lost out just because he was not credibly dressed and the headmaster had judged him accurately. The moral of the story is to dress the part. Encouragement. Just to give some encouragement. All communication skills can be learned. Initially, it takes a lot of time and effort. But once you've internalized those skills, it becomes a habit. And then it comes through naturally. Another question. How do you feel about that? Give me a thumbs up if that is good news. Ah, excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. 6. What basic communication skills are essential? I'm only going to look at 3 skills for now. The first one is exercise habitual politeness, courtesy, and kindness. It doesn't matter what type of day you are having or who you're speaking to. What is so important is to be well-mannered at all times. You may ask why? Because at some stage you will transfer information to that person and they will be more open to receive it. Let me share an example. I was presenting a course. Actually, it was a communication course. They were busy renovating the bathroom nearby. There was a massive noise going on. They were breaking down a wall. I went to the builder and spoke respectfully and politely, which made him open to my point of view. And we could negotiate that he breaks down the wall during our lunchtime. A wise man once said that harsh words stir up anger. A gentle answer turns away that anger. The next basic communication skill is listening attentively. We need to acquire the habit of really focusing on what the other person is saying. That means taking time to listen and not letting your mind race ahead of you with the answer. It means to hear verbally what they are saying and how they are saying it non-verbally. This will give you the necessary clues and cues to formulate the correct answer. Let me give an example. My husband wanted to purchase a tractor and I was against it. So he said, let's have a discussion. So I sat down and folded my arms. And if you can perhaps just look at me. I sat down, I folded my arms. I looked down and saw my folded arms. At that stage, I had just started learning about body language. And I realized I had to change my posture. First of all, some background on closed arms. Closed arms refers to having both arms folded together across the chest. You're welcome to close your arms just to get the feeling. Just close your arms and see what it feels like so that you can see. Okay, super, thank you. Now this is an attempt to put a barrier between the person and someone or something they don't like. This gesture is universal and is decoded with the same defensive or negative meaning almost everywhere. You can open up your arms now, please. I want you to listen. So thank you very much. I also want to talk about tilting the head to the side gesture. Can you see my head? I'm doing it extremely now just so that you can get the picture. This communicates that the person is interested in what they're seeing or hearing. And you know what is so amazing? One's ears actually pop open. So you can use this when a discussion or meeting is boring. You are welcome to tilt your head for the rest of the discussion, then I know you're listening. Thank you. Okay, back to my example. So I opened my arms and I tilted my head. As a result, I was open. We could discuss the pros and cons and arrive at an informed decision. It was a win-win situation and conflict was avoided. The third basic communication skill is to be emotionally empathetic. I want to sketch a scenario to illustrate the definition of empathy. Now perhaps the picture is a bit excessive, but I want you to get the idea. Imagine you are on Queen Mary II and it's rough seas. Can you see those rough seas over there? Very rough. You are on deck. Someone standing at the railings is very seasick. They're nauseous, green, and feeding the fish. If you were to exercise or display empathy, you need to observe the situation. You can see that the person is feeling very ill. You can also imagine yourself feeling like that. So you say, oh, I can see you're not feeling well. Can I call someone or bring you some water? Now, if you were to exercise sympathy, you would be experiencing the exact same feelings and symptoms and go and stand right next to them. And you would also feel terrible and feed the fish. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person without necessarily going through the same situation. So you try to understand what they are experiencing. We don't always know what is going on in another person's life. So it is essential to learn not to be judgmental, not to be impersonal, or detach yourself from them. And definitely, especially when you've taken offense. Remember the family member with the PhD in maths? He took offense, and the headmaster judged incorrectly. That was a lose-lose situation. We should rather work on being emotionally open and practice understanding and sharing feelings. To identify the feeling, you could say, for example, what are you feeling right now? You can also pick up on voice tone, body language, and what is not said. These are all cues left for us to follow. I want to give you an example. Can you please look at my body language? I am fine, thank you. I'm going to repeat it. I am fine, thank you. If you look at voice tone and the words, I am fine, thank you, that did not sound confident. The body language, hand in front of the nose, that means I'm lying. More about that later. What is not said? Did you see my pursed lips when I went like that? I'm just really exaggerating it now. My downcast eyes and head tilted down. Something is not right here. So you need to dig and follow up by starting to ask questions to get to the real reason. Because of noticing body language, you can pick up on the cues and take action. Do you remember the 3 monkeys? Speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil. Notice that the hands cover the mouth, eyes and ears, or body language. When children lie, they don't want to look you in the eye, or they don't want to hear the truth or what you have to say. Then this is a very obvious movement that you can pick up very quickly. But as one grows older, these gestures become more subtle. A slight touch on the mouth or moving to the nose or near the eyes or slightly touching the ear. A question for you, a yes or no in the chat box. Have you noticed people acting like that before?
Lots of yeses, Yvonne. And I know I do that sometimes as well.
Okay, super.
Lots of yeses.
Great, let's continue then. Number 7, what is a communication style? There are basically 4 styles of communicating which affect all of our interaction with other people. It's the director, expressor, thinker, and harmonizer. I am not going to give any more information. This is a tantalizer. Read more about them in the ebooks. There is also a test you can complete to find out what your communication skill is. I want to highlight some points. Each style has its own specific way of seeing the world around them. They also prefer a particular way of listening, responding, making decisions, and solving problems. Many people normally utilize two styles, and this combination influences then how you communicate. 8. Communication barriers in our interaction with people. Basic communication is straightforward, but what makes it intricate, difficult, and challenging are the barriers that we put in the way. When communication doesn't happen, conflict often does. I'm going to look at 3 barriers. The first one is physical barriers. It's the environment or climate, like thunder, wind, rain, natural noise. And then you have time and distance. This is a time zone difference, let's say between America and South Africa. I have to share this with you. At one time, I phoned my brother-in-law on his birthday at 6 a.m. South African time, which was 4 a.m. in England. I had totally forgotten about the time difference. That was very, very bad. And it never happened again. Remember we discussed noise? It can also be a physical barrier. Do you know that we have written noise? Bad handwriting is written noise. The next one is perceptual barriers. Perceptual barriers are the mental blocks that we create as a result of the perceptions that we have of certain people, situations, or events around us. For example, there can only be a woman driver, or a typical male attitude. Everyone perceives things differently based on their own unique, diverse social, cultural background, educational level, value system, and so forth. Everything we interpret is subject to this experience, whether good or bad. Then the third one is emotional barriers. Emotion is one of the chief barriers to open and free communication, and is comprised largely of fear, mistrust, and suspicion. Psychologically speaking, the roots of our emotional mistrust of others lie in our childhood. Apologies, where did I go now? Let me just go back again. I am very excited about all this information. Okay, let's start with, I was speaking about the psychological effect, which results in the child youth. So basically there we have been taught to mind your P's and Q's. Don't speak until you're spoken to. Children should be seen and not heard. And then other barriers are cultural barriers, language, gender, and interpersonal barriers. A question to you. Can you identify with these barriers? A yes or no in the chat box, please.
We have a yes and another yes. Yeah, lots of yeses coming through.
Excellent. 9. Personal space and the 4 personal zones. All of us need personal space, and when someone else invades that space, we feel uncomfortable and threatened. The definition of personal space is seen as the distance between yourself and the person you're speaking to. The 4 personal zones. I first want to look at the intimate zone. This is 15 to 45 centimeters from the body. This is your private zone, and only those emotionally close to you may enter it, like a spouse, family, and friends. Your mind alarm will sound if the person gets too close. Then the personal zone. That's 45 to 120 centimeters from the body. You set this distance when you interact with people at social events, especially when you know them well. The third one is the social zone, 1.5 to 3.5 meters from the body. This is the distance you usually keep between yourself and strangers. Lastly, the public zone, a range of over 3.5 meters. This is a comfortable distance from which to address your colleagues. Keep these zones in mind when you speak to people, because you may make them uncomfortable without realizing it. 10. Body language, one of my favorite topics. Our ability to communicate well, both personally and professionally, is imperative to success. But it's not the specific words that we use. It is our non-verbal cues of body language that speak the loudest. Definition of body language is the use of physical behavior, expressions, and characteristics to communicate non-verbally. And this is often done unconsciously rather than consciously. That means that we are not always aware of what we are really saying to someone, and we need to realize that. All of your non-verbal actions, the gestures you make, your posture, tone of voice, how much eye contact you make, your handshake, facial expressions, all send convincing messages. I'd like to pick up on eye contact and handshake. Looking at eye contact. In some nations in South Africa, it is their culture not to look you in the eye. Now, notwithstanding this, people can take offense, which can result in a conflict situation and is totally unnecessary. All miscommunication. Now the handshake. There are a variety of handshakes. It can be a strong and confident one, or a wet fish handshake, that limp, sloppy, dishcloth type of handshake. That type of handshake says that the person is weak in character, cold in nature, insincere, and has a lack of commitment. But it can also be due to cultural reasons. In Asian and certain African cultures, it demonstrates respect, and a firm handshake can be seen as offensive. Whether you realize it or not, when you interact with others, you're constantly giving and receiving wordless signals. I'd like to share this story. When my son was younger, he had a certain friend that he didn't always want to go out with. We had a specific communication book that he would give me. Then I would ask him, have you fed the dog? Have you done your homework? Have you washed the dishes? Tasks that I usually knew he has not done. Then he would look at me and say no. Then I would say, well, my son, then you can't go out. And his friends would say to me, you have a strict mother. Meantime, back at the ranch. By learning to understand and to accurately use nonverbal communication and its signals, you can voice exactly what you really have in mind, relate better with others, and build stronger, more rewarding relationships. A question. Does this make sense? A thumbs up for yes or nothing for no. Super. Excellent. Thank you very much. 11. Why does body language matter? Our nonverbal communication cues show the person you're communicating with three things. Whether or not you care, if you're being honest, and how well you're really listening. It's all about the way you listen, look, move, and react. When your nonverbal signals correlate with your words, they improve trust, transparency, and rapport. And that's exactly what you want. I want to talk a bit about smiling. In the example, you see a very confident smile compared to a very nervous smile. A feel-good grin is contagious. When you smile at someone, it sends a signal to their mouth muscles to do the same. Their smile triggers the parts of their brain that deal with happiness, and they feel a greater sense of connection with you. A question. Will you please smile broadly if you agree and press the thumbs up button? Thank you, Desiree. Excellent. Oh, okay. I like all these smiles. That's very good. 12. Can non-verbal communication be faked? Oh, I enjoy this question. The general answer to this question is no, because of the lack of congruence that is likely to occur in three areas: the use of the main gestures, the body's microsignals, and then the spoken word. Let me give an example. Open palms are associated with honesty, but when a faker holds his palms out and he smiles at you as he tells a lie, like, you can get 25% interest per month on your investment, his micro gestures give him away. His pupils may contract, one eyebrow may lift, or the corner of his mouth may twitch, and these signals contradict the open palm gesture and the sincere smile. No matter how hard you try to fix your face, it may still give you away, and it only takes a fraction of a second. Just a flash of a facial twitch, a grimace, or raised brow that leaves an impression that's hard to shake. The result is that the receiver tends not to believe what he hears. In the next set of slides, I want to share some different aspects of communication that I think you'll find very interesting. 13. First impressions. It takes about 3 seconds for someone to evaluate you when you meet them for the first time. In this short period, the other person forms an opinion founded on your appearance, your body language, your demeanor, mannerisms, and how you are dressed. These first impressions are nearly impossible to erase, and they often set the tone for the relationship that follows. It is therefore vital to be able to create a good impression at first glance. Let me share an example of a company that services construction machinery, the yellow machinery. When their mechanics are sent out to service a machine on site, they come dressed formally. That means a tie. Then they change into their overalls and do their work. Once finished, they change back into their formal dress coat before leaving. This portrays a high level of professionalism. A question for you. These two financial advisors that you don't know very well approach you to advise you on some money matters. One is formally dressed and the other very informally. Remember, we're focusing on first impressions. Which one would you trust? 1 or 2 in the chat box, please.
It's unanimous. Number 1.
Okay, absolutely. And that makes sense. It's logical. 14. Strategies on how to create an excellent first impression. Very briefly. Arrive on time. Present yourself suitably. Be yourself. Have a champion smile. Be open and confident. People who have knowledge on body language and communication know exactly what to look for. 15. How does one avoid jumping to conclusions in a communication situation? In today's fast-track world, we tend to be under pressure to act immediately, rather than taking our time to reason things out and ponder on the true facts. This usually leads us to a wrong conclusion and can also cause conflict with other people who may have drawn quite different suppositions on the exact same matter. It is fundamental that you ensure that your actions and decisions are grounded on reality. A technique that one can use is called the ladder of inference. The ladder of inference. Basically, the ladder of inference illustrates the thinking process that we go through, mostly without realizing it, to go from a fact to a decision or an action. Another tantalizer. You can read more about that in part 3 of Developing Essential Communication Skills. 16. Does stress have an influence on communication? It is critical to learn to manage what I term stress in the moment, as it comprises your competence to communicate. When you are feeling stressed, you tend to easily misread other people and to send confusing nonverbal signals. Emotions are transmittable. That means that if you're angry, and you will most probably make other people angry too, thus making a bad situation worse. Rather, take a moment to calm down and go to the bathroom before you continue the conversation. Let me share a personal example. One day a work colleague described how I managed stress in a moment, and I was rather amused at what she had to say. In the example, I was sitting down and I had just heard something that I was not satisfied with. She said, when Yvonne gets angry, she turns around, picks up her glass of water, takes a few sips, and puts it down. Then she's ready for the discussion. When she said that, I realized that was true. Or you can simply say, I'm too angry to discuss this now. You can speak about it when I'm ready. Once you've recuperated and gained your emotional equilibrium, you'll feel more in control to deal with the situation in a positive way. 17. How does one start a conversation? A conversation is actually a building block in the creation and maintenance of relationships. On the surface, a conversation is an uncomplicated interchange of thoughts and ideas. But below the surface, it yields abundant opportunities to build and strengthen relationships and to discover new information. There are basically 7 ways to start a conversation. For some, starting a conversation with someone they don't know is extremely difficult. In the ebook, there are specific techniques that you can learn to use that will help you build your confidence. This has just been an appetizer in the hope that you want to learn more about communication, and then to apply these skills and make them your own. Enjoy!